And our little subgroup is focused on bike and pedestrian paths. And I know I've spoken about that at our RPC meetings as well, what my passion is about it. And I look forward to hearing about the plan going forward and being as involved as possible. Thank you. I just got home from work, so I'm like,
Thank you, Sydney. Cindy. Christy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christy Fragale. I work with WSP. I'm in the Civil Transportation Design Group, and my passion is really the multimodal design. So I work on a lot of trails, ADA upgrades, bike lanes, and everything throughout New England. And I recently transferred from our Virginia office to Rhode Island. So I'm starting to get involved in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Mass. So curious to see what everyone has to say, and the plan looks great.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Helen, why don't you unmute yourself and say hello?
Hi, I'm Helen Look. I live in Higganum, and I found out about this meeting from Peter Bard from the Haddam Democrats Town Committee. And I have 3 young kids, and we love biking, so I was really excited to see what the plan is.
Great, thank you. John Hall, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm John Hall with the Jonas Center for Earth and Art in Middletown and Portland. We've initiated and even completed a couple of multimodal trail projects, and I'm on the Complete Streets Committee of Middletown and in Portland.
Great, thank you, John. Laura Francis, say hello.
Hello, Francis, Town of Durham, First Selectman, and representing our Complete Streets group today. I think I'm the only one here. Thank you.
Oops. Sam, are you there? Did you freeze? Oh.
Frozen.
Well, Sam's frozen. Rob, I'm not. Beth has been trying to get into this meeting multiple times, and I'm not sure if anyone has a text her or give her a call separately. I don't know if cell phone number. She seems to be either frozen or trying to get in. We get this message. She keeps popping up, Beth Emery. So I'm not sure. I keep admitting her, but she's like, seems like she's trying to be admitted like on multiple accounts or multiple times. I'm not sure there's a way of connecting with her.
Yeah, I can give it a try. I can call her.
Okay. I know she'd want to be here and looking forward to it, so I didn't want to have her have a technical difficulty.
Yeah. I think the last, I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yep, you're good now.
Yeah, the last person to introduce was PB. I don't know who that is, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Oh.
Yes, hey Sam, it's Pat Bands.
Hey, Pat.
To a lot of familiar faces, Cindy and Amelia, and I see Christine. Hi to other Chesterites. I'm representing the Chester Economic Development Commission today, and we're always talking about ways to connect some of our assets to our downtown village. So this fits right in with that. So we'll be looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Pat. And I see Representative Christine Palm has just joined us. So why don't you say hello, Christine?
Hey, everybody. I represent Chester, Deep River, Essex, and Haddam, and I've been working with some folks in Haddam. So thank you, Haddam folks, for being on to try to make a connection among the towns along the river with a Blue Greenway. So I'm very passionate about this project, and anything to give pedestrians and bikers precedence over cars. I'm in. Thank you.
And I apologize to Beth that she's having such trouble getting in. I'll just introduce her. Beth Emery was a long time member of our regional planning committee. Recently stepped down from that. She's been on our steering committee for this project, and she's been a bike ped advocate for our region and for Middletown. So we've appreciated her involvement in the project, and hopefully that she'll get her tech issues sorted so she can join us more actively. All right, with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ken and Rory.
Great.
And we'll say we are recording this conversation. Will be able to be viewed. So if Beth can't make it in, she'll be able to view it, and you should all receive notice. But full disclaimer, it's being recorded. So. and it'll be up on RiverCOG's website as a recording for watching subsequently. So thank you for attending and seeing some new faces. We have some that have been involved, and we'll introduce who during the steering committee part of this process, but we're sort of at the end of the process in a sense to present to the public and obtain some more feedback. And it's great that we have so many people directly involved with the region on the topic of complete streets, pedestrian planning, bicycle planning to give us some feedback and ideas. So Roy, the next slide, we can sort of give an overview of where we're going today. So we're going to give a little bit of background of RiverCOG for those who may not know and why we're doing this plan. And then Roy will walk through a little bit of the plan vision goals and what we did for the engagement efforts and where the draft plan is in the next steps. So myself and Ken Livingston, FHI Studio, we are just as an overview in Hartford, Connecticut. Rory is a resident of, and I'm forgetting, it's
Deep River.
Deep River. I was going to say Deep River, then I was like, get confused with the Deep River Chester thing. So Rory's a resident of Deep River, and we're excited to present this plan and where we are. So for those who don't know, RiverCOG is the regional planning agency for this part of the state. You can see on this map, 17 municipalities, and the intent of this plan is to really link and have a high level understanding of planning, bicycle and pedestrian planning across the region. So it's the balancing of the statewide plan, active transportation plan that Department of Transportation did within individual municipalities. So this is sort of the filling in between those two levels of plans and putting those connections. And it's great to have so many different communities on here today to hear about this plan. So next slide, Rory. So as we said, what is the regional plan? It's looking to create those connections across municipalities. And what we heard, and we'll talk about, is technical assistance, funding opportunities, and economic opportunities as they relate across the region, across the towns. There's opportunities to share information, share knowledge, potentially. For technical assistance, one of the things we talked about was actually trail counts and trail and usage information on both roads and on trails of where bicyclists and pedestrians are. Are there opportunities to do some sharing across the region for the resources and capabilities? And also knowing, in many cases, especially when you're talking bicyclists, they're crossing town borders, they even are crossing regional borders, but along this area with the central spine, you may say, of the Connecticut River, there's lots of tourism opportunities that exist. And you may not think of it as the bicyclists as the tourists per se, but there are people that come to this region to bike and are tourists because they are, you can think of it as stopping in local restaurants and stores and opportunities there. Within the region, there's opportunities to promote health and just quality of life. Can more amenities for bicycle and pedestrians attract more people to want to live here and recreate here? And employers view this as a great place to be located. So all of this is looking at that regional level. Next slide.
And just as a reminder for everyone, if you're not muted, please mute yourself. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. That's great. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. Ken gave you a little bit of background about the plan. I'll provide an overview of what information helped shape the plan, as well as what we included. But first, I want to say that the plan was led by a steering committee, and this included members of bike and pedestrian advocacy groups across the region. And the committee included Carrie Allen of the Clinton Bicycle and Pedestrian Alliance, Martin Anderson of the Durham Complete Streets Committee, Beth Emery of Middletown Complete Streets Committee, John Hall of the Jonas Center for Earth and Art, as well as Middletown and Portland's Complete Streets Committees, and then RiverCOG staff of Janice Elimeyer, Sam Gold, and Rob Harrimet. We met with the committee members over the course of this project, and they provided great insights, a lot of feedback to us, and we incorporated all of their feedback into this plan. And we'll continue to do so as we wrap this up. And just wanted to say, first and foremost, thank you for the steering committee members. It's great to working with you. So working with the committee, we crafted. Working with the committee, we crafted 3 guiding principles or goals for the plan, and these include that the lower Connecticut River Valley provides safe and inviting routes used by cyclists and pedestrians. They are assets that improve regional connectivity, promote public health, and are economic drivers. The second one is the Lower Connecticut River Valley has an equitable network of bicycle and pedestrian amenities that are accessible to users across the region. And the third one is the Lower Connecticut River Valley provides bicycle and pedestrian facilities that connect village centers and nodes, as well as the open space resources that are so valued across the region. And I'd say these goals really help to guide the recommendations laid out in this plan. So previous public involvement was conducted to support this plan back in 2020. And at that time, an online mapping tool was created, and this enabled participants to go online and place pins on a map of the region and really make comments about specific locations. The image to the right kind of shows an example of a pin someone placed where they were able to select, by location, and added comments like crosswalk needed or poor sidewalk condition. And we also heard a lot of comments about things like need better access between different locations. And this example said, that need better access between Higginham Center and Higginham Cove area. And we also heard that there was a desire for some quick build projects that would contribute to placemaking efforts in the region. And Facebook ads such as these were created and advertised the mapping tool link. And as I said, this was back in 2020 when this effort was kicked off. So the draft plan is currently online for review and comment. A link was included in the flyer invite that I know Rob sent around advertising this meeting. And so what the plan includes is an overview of existing conditions related to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in the region. It includes some municipal overviews of the member municipalities. It includes design guidelines and recommendations, and it also includes an implementation plan and some information on funding sources. So the existing conditions overview provides information about the plan. It discusses the goals of the plan, provides a review of past work efforts. It also looks at crash analysis findings, some Strava, and the streetlight analysis that John was asking about earlier. And it also provides an overview of RiverCOG had some Sustainable Connecticut fellows interning with them over the summer, so it includes some information about their findings as they visited sites from across the region. And so on these next slides, I'll just discuss some of our key findings from our existing conditions review. So when we took a look at crash data, we found that, not surprisingly, bike and pedestrian crashes were highest in the municipalities with the greatest population densities. And we looked at a 3-year period between 2017 and 2019, choosing not to include 2020 just since the pandemic numbers consistently tend to be much lower. People were driving a lot less during these days, so it's not really a regular year to look at. But we did find that in those 3 years in the region, there were 3 fatal pedestrian crashes and 1 fatal bicycle crash, which is shown in that map there. So this graph here shows the top 5 crash locations, including Clinton, Cromwell, Middletown, Old Saybrook, and Westbrook. And again, these are the locations with the greatest population densities per square mile. And that map on the right there highlights the areas with the higher crash volumes that are kind of shown in the reds and the orange colors there. Okay, so we also utilize a tool called Strava in our analysis. And for anybody that doesn't know, Strava is a tool that allows users to log their trips into an app. So you have to actually go on and log each trip that you want to show up. And you can share your trips on social media, you can brag about them, you can make routes, you can track your times. So we use this just to kind of show where people are currently walking and biking, really provided a snapshot of desire lines where we know people are going now. So we looked at various locations throughout the region, pulling data for both bicycling and walking trips, and we found that riders on busy state routes tend to go out on the weekends in the early morning hours, avoiding traffic. And we also, Sam brought up a good point at one of our meetings. This also coincides when those longer group rides tend to occur on the weekends as well. And just some key points from this analysis of the Strava findings. We found that bicyclists choose to use the busier state routes, generally weekend, early morning hours. Mountain bikers, we didn't see that early morning, weekend, that was kind of all throughout the week. We didn't see that early morning peak that we saw with the state routes, and probably they're not concerned as much about getting out ahead of traffic in the mornings. We did also find across the region that, where parallel alternate routes exist, users often would, go on the parallel routes to avoid state routes. And example, I looked at in Killingworth, heavier ridership going north-south on the Rosemead Hill. If anybody knows that route, it goes kind of parallel to Route 81. And we found, that similar patterns across the region of kind of shifting, avoiding the main route. So it makes sense. I would do the same thing. And we did find that pedestrian volumes tend to be heavier around like the village downtown nodes and in scenic areas where nice things to look at, beaches, the river. And so, where there were destination points, we found that the volumes for pedestrians tended to be higher. Then we talked about Streetlight. We used a tool called Streetlight, and this is just to get a sense of where people are going and how long these trips tend to be. So like Sam was saying earlier, if anybody was on for that, it's a little scary. The tool uses cell phone data to actually track people's movements. It provides information on trip origins, destinations, travel distances, speeds, and times, traveler attributes, some demographic data, and then any alternatives people can potentially take. So the streetlight license that RiverCOG paid for as part of this process allowed for us to select 10 zones to analyze, and we chose the following locations based on factors like proximity to the region's train stations, town centers, commercial areas, prevalence of schools, and municipal centers. So like I said, we were limited to 10 zones. So these are the 10 that we did at this point in time. And now that RiverCOG owns these zones, they can, further analysis of these zones were to be done, they would be able to do that if we wanted to do that in the future. This is just I'll go through these quickly. The close-ups, you'll see the 10 locations. Most of them are in downtown areas. We were able to lump Tylerville and Haddam with downtown East Haddam into one zone. Middletown, we extended west of Main Street just to make sure we included Wesleyan, and then Portland and Westbrook's zones as well. Okay, so we analyzed trips based on length, and we're really surprised to find a high percentage of bike trips in some locations under 2 miles. In Deep River, that's the town I live in. I was really shocked that 90% of bike trips that going through the downtown were originating from less than 2 miles away. And the same with Old Saybrook, around 72%. As we were analyzing this, I'm working with our traffic consultant that helped us with the analysis. I thought, that seems so high. And, I was thinking about it. I know River Road in Deep River, or even Route 80, a lot of cyclists will go on for the long distance trips. So like, since those locations were not included in our downtown study areas, we didn't capture some of these long distance rides, the 20 to 30 miler trips that we know are occurring. And like same for Old Saybrook too. I know many riders avoid Route 1 at all costs and ride like the beach loop along Great Hammock and stuff like that. So that's why like that type of trip wasn't included in these downtown zones. So we also wanted to provide a high-level overview of some of the achievements in each of RiverCOG's municipalities. We reached out to contacts in each town and asked them to provide information about their town's recent accomplishments, any issues or concerns they had, as well as opportunities that they saw. And the opportunities that were pulled out of this review directly influenced our recommendations moving forward. So as I said, these are really high-level overviews. We dedicated 2 pages per town with a little demographic highlight. So we weren't able to capture everything, but I think these provided a good snapshot into each municipality's existing infrastructure and needs. And these were sent out to one contact from each town that RiverCOG identified as a good resource for this. We also included a chapter on design guidelines. This includes facility selection guidance for a variety of facility types, sidewalks, bike lanes, shared use paths, and other types of facilities. We included a bicyclist facility user matrix, which identified what kind of facility different users might feel most comfortable riding on. We also provided information on all ages and abilities riders, providing information on safe, comfortable, and equitable facilities. We included information on environmental benefits, health and wellness, signage guidelines, and some information on infrastructure and amenities. Just gonna take a drink. So getting into our recommendations, you know, listening to the steering committee, existing data and reports, and information from those municipal overviews that I talked about, you know, we really felt that there were 4 different types of recommendations for the region. The first one is what we're calling these village district recommendations. These include features like sidewalks, crosswalks, lighting that really focus on the region's town centers and nodes. We tried to look at it thinking about what types of facilities would encourage people to walk or bike in these areas and make it more comfortable for those that already do. And so in the more rural communities like Lyme and Killingworth, our recommendations really highlighted the open space resources with signage, wayfinding, parking recommendations. So in the region's beach communities, we included, recommendations that focus on improving safety in the densely populated neighborhoods, many of which, you know, experience a boom during the summer months. You know, and around some of the region's lakes, like Lake Potapog and East Hampton and Lake Bezic and Middlefield, we felt that these same types of recommendations were relevant and important. So these types of recommendations include things like considering opportunities to restripe some of the primary beach roads with things like advisory shoulders, or providing signage, you know, directing pedestrians to walk facing traffic, to name a few of the recommendations. And then we also include Greenway and trail recommendations. You know, these are focused on the regional connections to the open space resources. These are, you know, things like extending the Shoreline Greenway Trail, the proposed Airline Trail connector route, and the proposed Connecticut River Green and Blue Way. We've included all of these. We know that this region, you know, so much of what makes the RiverCOG region what it is like beautiful natural resources, and connecting these was definitely a focus of this plan, you know, identifying those connections. We also have what we call state route and commercial node recommendations. And these are focused on recommendations for the commercial areas along routes 1, route 17, route 66, and route 154. And these locations are shown at the map at the right. And they include, you know, things like pursuing funding and assistance for complete streets planning and sidewalk planning and construction, and access management recommendations as well on these commercial areas. We also include some policy recommendations. These include, you know, implement a complete streets policy, a health and wellness policy. And some of the action steps we thought were important was like education and training, things like safe routes to school. We talked about the possibility of maybe doing some regional bike and pedestrian counts, and things like road safety audits, for example. So then we developed what we call location-based recommendations, and these are provided for each municipality. And these are based on feedback from the steering committee, from what we found doing our existing conditions, and then the municipal survey results from each community really provided a lot of great input into these recommendations by town, by municipality. And our implementation summary, which is included, categorizes each recommendation based on like time frame, short, medium, and long-term time horizon, and it, you know, it bases these on the goals achieved for each of the recommendations. Okay, so next steps. We're nearing the end of this process. This is our 4th and final steering committee that we opened up to the public. The draft plan is now under review. And the link Rob provided will bring you to a PDF document of it. You can look it over. You can leave comments right in the document, or you can feel free to email Rob or myself any comments you have. And over the next few weeks, we'll incorporate all those comments and finalize the plan. I'm hoping to finalize this plan by, you know, the end of February. And that's that. And then with that, I guess I just want to say thanks to everybody and open up for discussion and questions.
Thank you, Rory, and thank you, Ken, for the presentation and all your work on this project. So let's open it up for questions. But before I do that, just want to welcome a few additional people who've joined us since we started. Diane Ikovic from Deep, welcome. I also see Barry. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. Please unmute and go ahead. We also have Rick Halloway from Chester and Tyler Tulloch. If you would like to introduce yourself, go ahead. And we have someone joining us by phone from a 713 area code. So if any of those people I just introduced want to say hello and introduce themselves, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm a new resident to Middletown and Connecticut in general.
Great, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm the 713 number, not technically in the 713 area code. I now live in Connecticut and was just very interested in hearing about what is being presented today.
Great. I'm glad you're no longer in Houston and you're here in Connecticut. Let's see. How about Barry?
Could you take yourself off mute, Barry, if you, it's the top right, but maybe not.
All right. And then we also have Diane. Welcome. Yeah.
And Beth, did you get in on the call yet? I see you're there again. Did you?
I am on my phone. Yeah, I couldn't get in on the computer, so I don't know what that was about, but I finally tried the phone.
Great. And we're recording this, so you'll be able to watch it later if you missed it.
All right. So I see Helen has her hand raised. So Helen, go ahead with your question.
Great. So your report looks amazing. What I'm really concerned or intrigued is with the follow-up. Like, are you going to bring it to each first selectman or mayor of each town, or how are you actually going to get action? Because it would be fantastic to obviously. I'm a big fan of the Blue Greenway proponent.
All right, so I will take that question. So the first step for this will be, we're welcoming people's comments at this point. So if you have comments or questions, or if we got something wrong, please, you can get that information to me, to Rob, to Ken or Rory. But we'll be bringing this to our regional planning committee, which is a committee of RiverCOG that usually handles regional plans. They're going to review it, and the plan for the plan will be for it to go to the RiverCOG board for a vote to adopt it. And we will be providing it to all of our 17 member municipalities and strongly encouraging them to consider the recommendations in this as they work on their capital plans, as they work on their public works, on their roads. But also we'll be using this for future state solicitations from the Transportation Alternatives Program, which is run by DOT, or the Recreational Trails Program, which is run by DEEP. We'll be looking for funding sources to implement some of these things, but also educating our towns and the DOT on road improvements or connections that could be done. And finally, making sure that our towns get this to their land use commissions, because when new developments come in, that's the time to ask for, let's say, sidewalk extensions on the property or other potential improvements. So thank you, Helen. It is a struggle to get money, but one last source is there may be new federal sources of funding from the new Infrastructure Act. So we'll be looking to that for potential competitive grants as well. So
and Sam, I think one agenda or one topic Roy talked about was the RSA program through CONDOT, which is road safety audits. And we know Deep River just recently was approved to have a road safety audit. These are all done through the Department of Transportation in coalition with local municipal officials and representatives and citizens. And it's free to towns. There's an application process, but that's something to be aware of, that there's been less applications, I think, from the RiverCOG region for, I'm not sure why, but it's something to encourage and we highlight in the plan to be aware of, because it's a great resource of having a more detailed, next level granular review of a roadway.
Oh, thank you for reminding me about the RSA.
Yeah.
Next, I see Representative Palm.
Thank you, Sam. You stole my thunder a little bit. I wanted to just remind everybody that the infrastructure bill has made funds available, and that at the state, we love to combine bonding packages with any kind of infrastructure that helps health and safety, schools, historic preservation. So if there's a way to connect dots in this locally with state funding that is available for things. So as Sam just said, if you have to tear up a road to put in a new sewer pipe, this is the perfect time to not just replace it with the road that was, but to think of in terms of pedestrian and bike access. I know that's a lot of coordination, but it sounds like you're doing a really good job with that. So I'm very impressed, and I'm grateful to you all, and I would be very happy to help push this agenda up at the Capitol.
Great. And one item that concerns me on the federal level is that most every federal transportation program requires a non-federal match. So finding funds on the state level for that match is going to be key, because most municipalities don't have the match money laying around.
So good news. I was on a call with the EPA 2 days ago, and they're waiving the state match for things that have to do with environmental impact.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can, I don't know if they will, DOT will accept that, but we can try making the argument, and hopefully they will. Yeah.
Yep. There's normally between 10 and 20% state match required, but the feds are waiving it with the infrastructure bill.
Yep. Excellent. Other questions or comments from our guests? All right, I see Cindy. Go ahead, Cindy.
All right, thank you. Great report. Thank you guys for pulling all of that together. So Chester was not included in the analysis in the 10 towns. So, but I would like to have perhaps an analysis done for Chester, whether we do it or we have assistance from you. That would be great. And is your contact information on the website? Rory, I'd like to talk to you, Rory.
Sure, yeah. After this, I can share my email and Rob can get it to you. And yeah, happy to take any comments or feedback. And I will say that, the street light, that was just one analysis, one tool that we looked at. We did, reach out to each municipality and get feedback. We reviewed plans, existing documents, et cetera. So that was just one tool.
Okay, that's great. In the long distance zone, so it just wasn't a zone that you wanted to consider into the draft plan?
What we wanted, we thought we'd get good information if we looked at trying to focus on the shorter trips, coming in and seeing if there's, some of these people that are driving on shorter trips, maybe if facilities were more comfortable for them, maybe they'd consider walking or biking on these trips. So that was something I should have mentioned in the presentation too. We did look at like all vehicles, so we didn't just focus on, the mode of bike or pedestrian. We looked at all vehicles and found, okay, this number of, trips are, me from my house in Deep River going to Adams to the grocery store a mile down the street, something like that. So maybe if, our thought process was okay, if facilities are more comfortable and inviting, maybe there's an opportunity to switch some of these trips and, both from like a journey to work or just an origin destination point. Ken, did you have anything else to say about the streetlight stuff or?
No, I think you covered it. Was looking at those potentially low-hanging fruit, or if there's looking at improvements around either villages or village centers or train stations, just to get some general anecdotal information. It was, while it's very statistical, we have raw numbers. It was kind of looking within this region, what are the characteristics? So we tried to get a few locations that had, the village center, some that had the more like the train station connection,
Yes.
just to get some anecdotal insights into how
Mhm.
trips are. So I think we can extrapolate the same type of information to like Chester to say there is a significant amount of people doing that 2-mile trip in a car right now that potentially with enhancements to the amenities and safety and maybe it's wayfinding and signage, you could kind of attract some of those people to think about walking. And it's more purely from that's the health and wellness side of things, quality of life, getting people out of cars and walking. So while we didn't have every sort of village node or center, I think the findings were similar across, the 3 or 4 village nodes that we had of there's a significant amount of people that still do the 1-mile drive that from a health perspective, there's opportunities there to really get them to consider it. But as Rory said, living in Deep River, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable to think about taking that walk to the supermarket right now, but maybe with some more amenities, if you could, it may be a more comfortable walk. So.
And that's wonderful, and that's all so important. I'm also just thinking about the long distance cyclists that we have here, and actually long distance runners too, and incorporating that somehow into the plan. We do have groups of cyclists that come into Chester, and I think they're long distance, and I think they're coming over Route 80, like you were saying earlier, Rory. For miles, and they come into Chester, they grab breakfast, and they go back out into whatever route they're taking back home.
Yep.
So
yeah, and we captured a bit more of that from the Strava data, which is those cyclists, and I'm one of them at times, are logging their routes and rides and competing against each other via that one. So we use the Strava more for that recreational or long distance cyclist, whether it in runner for both of those. So we do have data, and some of that information is actually pretty amazing for looking at that of where people are, as Roy said, avoiding some of the state roads or back roads that they're using and getting some understanding. I mean, I'm in West Hartford and we have people that say, oh, no one rides on that road. And I'm like, well, the data shows that there's a lot more people riding, just not when you're driving down at lunchtime. So the Strava data is another great resource, and that's both free, and the RiverCOG has access to that in a different format. So there's other opportunities to look at that was sort of exactly that, the Lycra crowd, as we may say.
right. And then just, sorry, one more thing, just Route 148 is a hugely trafficked road, that's great English, but it's a trafficked road, and it has a lot of safety concerns. So I would like to see 148 included in the state roads analysis and improvement plans. I've talked to Christine Palm about that too, and we'll continue to discuss that through Chester, Killingworth, and so on. Thank you.
Sam,
Thank you all. Thank you so much for all of your work.
Sam, can I respond really quickly to what Cindy just said? Because of state roads being under the control of DOT, the municipalities aren't really at liberty to do a lot of work on those roads without DOT buy-in, like the barriers that they put and stuff. So it's definitely a coordination project or problem opportunity.
That's why we're so glad you're here to help us with that.
So next we have Beth Emery. Go ahead, Beth, unmute yourself and go ahead with your question.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So, the overall presentation, I think is really quite good. I like the way it's structured and the way it reads. I do have a few comments. First is, Sam, it's great to see a bike sitting behind you. It looks like you've been commuting to and from work. I noticed that, so good job. I wanted to mention education, which doesn't get a lot of coverage there. I know it's mentioned, but there are programs in Connecticut and certainly across the country where they are doing education of 4th graders, where school systems have purchased bikes it's regularly in the PE program. Berlin is doing a high school program. CAP has a lot of mountain biking and some road biking stuff going on. I bring that up because I think bringing those kinds of programs to the attention of the readers of this document can really help to encourage other communities to think about it. So I'd like to see a little bit more of a piece about potential for education in the schools, but also a notation that there are adult education available through the League of American Cyclists, where you can take a traffic, safety class, because I think if people want to start riding and they're nervous and they're in that nervous category, people don't realize that these programs can and should be made more available. But they are available in Connecticut too, and we'd like to grow that. New Haven is really doing a lot with an education program now, providing free 8-hour classes, 4-hour classes for students to come and learn more. So I wanted to point out that education piece. I think that we can do more, and it would really make a difference to educate people about why education can make such a big difference in making the streets safe for everyone. The second point I just wanted to make, and you use the term village district, but also village node. It might be better to use the term village node, because there is a state statute that defines what a village district is. And for those that, not that many people know that it exists, but it starts to become confusing if you know that it exists. So maybe there's some slightly different language to be used there. And then
Absolutely.
I also just wanted to, oh,
You
okay.
caught me there.
Okay, good. And the last point that I wanted to make, and I was able to get on the document, and I did make some notice of a couple of the additional things, but the consistency in the language, there's a difference between earlier in the document, around page 62, I think, where you define shared use and you have all those categories. Later on in the document, somewhere, I don't know if it's around page 100 or so, you're talking about greenways and multi-use trails, and you're changing the language. And it's not consistent with what you presented earlier on in the state DOT categories. And so I think that you can clean up the consistency of what you mean between a greenway, a multi-use trail, a shared use trail, which I see the same as a multi-use trail, but you got to keep it consistent. That's all I'm saying with how you do the definition. So thanks. That's what I have to say today.
Great, thanks, Beth. And I did go in the document and I saw those comments, so thank you for leaving those in there. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, I see John Hall has his hand raised. Go ahead, John.
Yes, this is of concern to me because some of our most critical conversations with Public Works has to do with lane width, because we wanted them to do something and they say, well, there isn't enough width. And I'm looking at page 69, at the printed page number 69. There are two tables for recommended shared roadway width on-street parking. There are two different tables with the same title. And frankly, I just can't understand what these figures mean because they vary a lot. And this would be a very useful table when we're talking. So I'd like to understand it. And a larger question is, if there's some other question arises in this plan down the road as to what something means, who do we turn to answer such a question? It may depend on the question, I realize, but that's what I'm kind of focused on right now. This page 69 of these tables, I just don't understand them because they vary. They're labeled the same.
Yeah, you know what, John, I'll have to review that. That might be a error on, my typing. Well, but I'll have to, I'll get back to you on this and review that and talk to Ken and try and figure out what's going on there. But I see what you're saying there, and
Yeah, okay.
we'll figure that out, definitely. Make sure that they're understandable, useful to you.
All right. Are there any more questions or comments for FHI or for RiverCOG? Let's see. Oh, Beth. Beth and Cindy. So why don't we have Beth first and then Cindy?
I just wanted a clarification of the final due date where you're going to take comments, additional comments.
Okay, so I'll take that. We do plan on having a presentation at the our RPC meeting on the 28th. As you know, Beth, RPC meetings are public meetings, so we would love to have you return and come to that. But we would like to give the RPC a chance to review it and get some comments in. So really, I see this document being finalized in March. But we encourage you to get in your comments as soon as possible, and probably no later than the 28th, which is the day of the RPC meeting. We would like to get this all wrapped up as soon as possible, and probably along that timeline with bringing it to the COG in March for their adoption.
Okay, great, thanks.
And Cindy, go ahead.
Cindy, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Cindy. Unmute if you have a question.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you. For regarding connection and connectivity between the region, the towns in the region, is part of the vision to connect the towns along 154 with a bike ped path, or is it more off-road through the Greenway trail, or both? Have you had discussion about that? Thank you.
I haven't had discussion, but maybe Rory or Ken.
Yeah, we know that the Blue Greenway Trail concept that goes up, that extends, connects different destinations on 154 along the river there. We know that a lot of support for that, and we've looked at in the village center, the town centers, thinking about added like bike and pedestrian sidewalk connectivity, things like that. We know that there is an interest in towns of Deep River and Chester to connect a sidewalk along 154 to connect those two towns. So we've discussed things like that, and then also off-road routes as well, particularly I believe the Haddam and Higginham area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but not necessarily all the way from the shoreline up to Middletown.
That would be great.
Wouldn't it? It would be great. So, okay.
Future dream.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, like one idea that I've discussed with the Essex Steam Train is the ability to take to bike one way and to take the train back, or vice versa. I think actually taking the train back would be better, just because you're tired. But the idea of being able to use our existing tourist assets like the steam train to support cycling and bicycle tourism, and also it can be used to support our marinas and tourism of people who arrive by boat, or just to get around our town centers or to connect our town centers. So, yeah, I think that is part of the larger vision here, making sure that people can get from town center or town center to town center without having to get into a car. Other questions or comments? All right, well, if there aren't any, I think we can wrap it up here. It's almost 4 o'clock. This presentation was recorded, so it will be posted to the RiverCOG website. So we can get that out to everyone and get out to you as well. Oh, I see John Hall has his hand raised. Go ahead, John.
Yes, in regard to that, I take it that the section of route from 150 end of 154 Aircraft Road up into Middletown is not addressed in this plan. If there's any hope of having a continuous bike route, we got to have a way to get from 154 and Aircraft Road another mile and a half or so to get to Randolph Road and Saybrook Road. What does this plan in fact not address that issue, or doesn't it really need to address that specific issue?
I think I think that's a good point, and I think that's something that we need to bring up. We need to discuss after this meeting to make sure it does address that.
Okay. Thank you.
Because ultimately the goal is to have a north-south connection, and on-road connections, of course, are the connection that we can do today. Off-road connections, potentially along the corridor or the railroad, are much more longer term. I see Beth, and I think Cindy, you still have your hand raised. I think that might be old. Beth, go ahead, Beth.
Well, I think, John brought up a good point about those north-south connections, and I just want to raise the issue of the work to get north of.
We're losing you there, Beth.
I think we might have lost you, Beth.
Sorry, I'm not sure where it left off, but my point is getting to Cromwell and getting north, being able to get to Hartford or get to Glastonbury via bike, just addressing the fact that we need the connections between the regional COGs is going to be important too.
Yeah. Oh, I guess.
And one of the reasons more funding on Newfield Street to find a kind of a safe path out of Middletown getting there. So thanks.
Yeah, that is something which I guess I can announce publicly is RiverCOG was notified by DOT last week that that the Connecticut Department of Transportation will be funding a corridor study looking at the routing of a connection between the airline trail in Portland through Middletown and Meriden to the Farmington Canal Trail in Cheshire. This trail, which this concept, this trail, which is already being pursued by those towns through extensions of the airline trail and trails in Middletown, including potentially part of that Newfield Street corridor, and the city of Meriden have already pursued, is in process. And with the generous help of John Hall, we were able to prepare an application, and that I don't know if we've gotten. I think we've gotten written confirmation, but it's still early. We still have to meet with DOT on this, but that study is going to address the gaps and the less clear connections of how you connect everything in all those towns to be able to connect the two longest trail multi-use trails in the state, the airline trail and the Farmington Canal Trail. So that's going to be an exciting project to work on and to work on with the towns. Also along those lines, I'm working with Deep on their project of how do we connect the gap between East Hampton and Portland on the airline trail. So, these projects are important to our quality of life. They're important to providing safe places for people to recreate. Deep is also discussed making the argument that these type of facilities are important during a pandemic when we need safe places to recreate outside. So this is something which I've been working on for a number of years, and with the support of John Hall and Rob Harrimet, hopefully is moving forward. So, but of course that will take is in cooperation with our neighboring COGs, and also with Capital Region, South Central Region, and the Nordic Valley region, because these trail systems to be able to connect where people want to go are much bigger than just one COG or one municipality. So, all right, other comments or questions? All right, well, I want to thank everyone again for attending, And yes, a contact info for Rory. So
Yes, I will add it in.
yeah, so we'll put this in the chat. I'm going to put my email address in here as well, and for Rob Harriman as well. Yes, and so those are the email addresses for me and for Rob Harriman at RiverCOG. Please reach out to us, and over the next couple weeks, please get us any more comments or questions. Anything that doesn't make sense, reach out to us, and so we can finalize this plan. It's been a number of years in the works, and we're so excited to be so close to completion and starting to work on some of these priorities. So thank you for attending. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Ken and Rory, for presenting. Thank you, Rob, for supporting this, and thank you for the members of our steering committee who joined us today. And everyone have a good afternoon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.